Today I want you to listen carefully because you didn't get here by chance. The title of this message isn't a simple announcement or a flashy phrase, it's a confirmation that your heart has been needing. Your soulmate is searching for you in silence. And I don't say this as an empty wish or a fleeting illusion. I say it because there are signs that God allows in our lives to remind us that what seems hidden is more alive than ever. That special person, the one who was designed to walk with you, is closer than you imagine, even though today they may seem far away, even though they haven't yet pronounced your name or knocked on your door. Perhaps at this moment you feel like you've been waiting too long, that the promises you once received are taking too long to be fulfilled, and that's causing you doubts, tiredness, and even questions that you don't dare say out loud. But today I want you to take a breath, open your heart, and allow these words to enter like a bomb, because there's a plan that hasn't stopped. There's a silent search that is progressing, there is a bond that is growing stronger, even if you do not yet see it with your eyes. It is not by chance that you suddenly feel memories, dreams, or unexpected thoughts that bring the sensation of someone who is not yet physically by your side. That is not a product of your imagination or simple nostalgia. They are spiritual signs that your soulmate is connected to you in the invisible. Many times God allows these glimpses so that you do not forget that there is a union that is being prepared, a union that does not respond to human time, but to divine time. Think about this. There is someone somewhere who also feels the absence of something they cannot explain, who wakes up with an emptiness that no other person can fill, who suddenly smiles for no apparent reason, and who knows deep down that they are thinking of you. That person exists, and although they have not yet taken the step towards you, they have already begun to search for you with their heart. The search is not always physical, many times it begins in the spiritual, in the invisible, in that longing that ignites without logic, but with certainty. Let me tell you something important. When God confirms something, no matter how much noise there is around, the inner voice stands firm, and that is what is happening with you right now. Confirmation comes into your life at a time when you were about to let go, to surrender, to say, maybe it wasn't for me. But here you are listening to this message, and what you receive is not a coincidence. It is an answer. The answer that yes, your soulmate exists, thinks about you, seeks you, and even though they do it in silence, their search has already begun to move toward you. Sometimes we confuse silence with absence, but that is not always the case. Silence can also be preparation. It can be the space where God works on what is still missing. It can be the ground where what will later bear fruit is sown. Your soulmate may be silent now, but in that silence they are building the strength they will need when they finally appear before you. And in the meantime, God invites you to trust, because nothing that is destined will be lost. Today you may feel like you are alone, but I want you to remember something. You were never forgotten. God does not play with hearts. He doesn't awaken desires and then make fun of them. If He planted in you the conviction that there is someone for you, it's because He has already designed them. And today's confirmation is that, yes, they are looking for you, even if you don't hear them yet, even if you don't see a message on your phone, even if there is no human voice saying so, the search has already begun and you are part of it. Now, pause with me. I want to ask you something. Write the word trust here in the comments. Write it as an act of faith, as a statement that breaks down doubt and opens the way to what God is preparing. By doing so, you are not only leaving a visible record of your trust, but you are also activating something inside you. Because writing it is more than just a word, it is a testimony that affirms, I believe, I hope, I know that my soulmate is looking for me, even if it is in silence for now. There is a big difference between waiting with anxiety and waiting with trust. Anxiety robs you of peace, makes you doubt, and takes away your strength. Instead, trust fills you with calm, reminding you that you are not adrift, that there is a purpose sustaining your path. And at this moment, while your soulmate takes steps that you may not be able to see, what you need most is that trust that anchors you in eternity. Imagine for a moment that person thinking about you, dreaming about you, wondering in their heart, where will you be? And when will the encounter come? That same feeling that you have also lives in them. And even though there are no words, even though there is no direct contact yet in the spiritual world, a powerful connection already exists. Do not underestimate the bond, because what you cannot see with your eyes, God is already uniting with His hands. Your story is not on pause, even though it may seem so. Every moment that you live, every learning experience, every moment of waiting is contributing something to the encounter that is coming. And when it comes, you will understand why there was so much silence, why there was so much time when it seemed that nothing was happening. You will discover that that silence was not emptiness, it was preparation, that the waiting was not punishment, it was a process, that the apparent distance was not forgetfulness, it was a path. And just as you are now receiving this confirmation, the time will also come when your soulmate will receive theirs, because God does not confirm from just one side. He prepares both. While you receive this word and your heart is strengthened, that person will also receive their own signs, their own impulses, their own inner calls that will direct them to you. And when paths cross, when eyes meet, everything that seems uncertain today will make sense. Think about how many times you have felt that God's timing is mysterious, that it seems to take longer than our minds would like. And it is true, because what is destined is not measured in minutes or human calendars. What comes from God is not rushed, it matures. This is also the case with your soulmate. Although you may feel that everything is at a standstill, in reality there is a constant, silent, profound movement that is guiding both hearts to meet at the exact point. That silence that you perceive now is not indifference, nor is it abandonment. That silence is like the seed that falls into the ground. It is invisible, it makes no noise, it does not attract attention, but hidden, it is already sprouting, it is already breaking through the earth, it is already pushing towards the surface. The day the seed blooms, you will understand that silence was necessary, because it was in that silence that life was created. Likewise, your soulmate is being worked on, molded, strengthened to be able to sustain what is about to be born between you. How many times have you asked yourself, why is it taking so long? Why do others seem to find companionship easily and I am still waiting? Do not compare your process with that of others, because yours is not ordinary, yours is special. This is not about a simple relationship. It is about a union designed since before you were born. A union with purpose, with direction, with deep roots. And that which carries so much spiritual weight requires special preparation. Perhaps your soulmate is at this moment resolving internal battles that you cannot see. Perhaps they are learning to heal wounds, to let go of old fears, to leave behind situations that would not allow them to surrender completely. And even though you may not know it, these struggles are part of the process to reach your full potential, without burdens that damage what God has planned. The same happens with you. Even in your waiting, there are lessons, processes, and changes that are preparing you to love in a different, more mature, and real way. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you're wasting your time. Nothing you experience is in vain. Every experience you go through, every person you meet, even every disappointment is teaching you something. And even though it hurts sometimes, that learning will be the foundation on which you will build your story of true love. What seems like a delay is actually a construction. Now listen to this. In the spiritual world, the encounter is already taking place. Even though you don't yet perceive it visibly, God is aligning paths, arranging circumstances, and setting aside what is not convenient so that what is written can be fulfilled. And when God opens a path, no force can close it. That is the certainty that you must keep deep in your heart today. Even though everything seems motionless, your soulmate has already begun to walk towards you, guided by an impulse that comes from above. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt a premonition so strong that you can't explain it? As if someone were thinking about you, even though you can't prove it. That's part of the invisible connection. The soul perceives before the eyes, it recognizes before the mind. And right now, without you knowing it, your soulmate may be having those same premonitions with you. That spiritual magnetism doesn't lie, because it doesn't come from a simple human desire, it comes from an eternal plan. Sometimes that person may appear in your dreams. Other times you may come across repetitive signs, a name, a song, a place that crosses your path over and over again. Don't dismiss it as a coincidence. In the spiritual, there are no coincidences, there are confirmations, and each of those signs is a reminder that something is in motion, that silence doesn't mean forgetfulness, it means preparation. I want you to imagine for a moment what will happen when the times align, when you look that person in the eyes and recognize that it is her, that she was the one you were waiting for, that she was the missing piece in your life. It will not be a simple encounter, it will be a profound recognition, as if your soul were saying, "I have been looking for you forever." That experience cannot be manufactured, it cannot be forced, it cannot be invented, it must be felt, it must be recognized, it must be confirmed, and when it happens, you will know that all the silence and all the waiting were worth it. Until that day, your task is not to despair, but to keep your heart steadfast. Impatience can lead you to settle for less, to accept what is not right, to deviate from the path that is laid out for you. That is why today God reminds you to trust, not to rush what He knows when to give, not to exchange a diamond for a fake crystal, just to fill the void of the moment. Your soulmate is on the way, and although now it is a silent path, it will soon become a real, tangible, and resounding encounter. I want to tell you something else. Don't think that because you don't see it yet, your prayer hasn't been heard. Every word you've raised, every tear you've shed in solitude, has been collected by God. And in His faithfulness, He responds in His own time, not yours. He responds perfectly, not in a hurry. And when you see the answer, you'll understand that if it had come sooner, you wouldn't have been ready. It wasn't ready and nothing would have worked. The perfection of divine timing will be evident the day it's fulfilled. In the meantime, don't close your heart. Don't let disappointment harden your faith, or bitterness steal your hope. Stay open, because the search has already begun. You may not hear footsteps at your door yet, but spiritually they are already being heard. And that certainty should be your peace. What was promised is not delayed, it is only prepared. And I want you to understand something very important. Your soulmate will not arrive to fill a void. They will arrive to share fully what you already are. Because true union is not born from lack, it is born from inner abundance. God does not want you to depend on another person to feel complete. He wants you to be aware of your value, your identity, your strength, so that when that union comes, both of you can walk together from freedom and not from need. That is why this time of waiting makes so much sense. It is a time when you are discovering who you are in God, where you are learning to love yourself, to value yourself, to recognize that your heart does not give itself to just anyone, but to the one for whom it was destined. This process is teaching you to differentiate between what is fleeting and what is eternal, what is superficial and what is true, what is seductive and what is truly edifying. Your soulmate will not be someone perfect, because perfection does not exist in human beings. But they will be someone prepared to walk with you in the same direction. And that is what makes the difference. It is not about them fitting a list of human requirements. It is about their steps being aligned with yours, their faith growing stronger with yours, their purpose complementing yours. Because in the end, a soulmate is not an ornament or a romantic illusion, it is a partner in purpose. That is why, even though today everything seems silent, trust that this silence is building invisible foundations. Trust that there is someone who is already being prepared for you, who at this very moment may be facing their own struggles, healing wounds, learning lessons that will make them stronger for when the time comes to meet you. And just like you, they also feel that something is missing. They also wonder why the void is not filled with anything else. That is the sign that there is already an inner calling that moves them, although they do not yet express it with words. Imagine that at this very moment, while you listen to these words, your soulmate is also receiving confirmation, perhaps in a different way, perhaps through a dream, advice, a sudden thought that worries them. That is the beauty of divine plans. God does not work on just one side. He moves the pieces in both hearts, on both paths, until everything fits together exactly. And there will come a day when you look back and remember this silence with gratitude, because you will understand that it was during this time that you learned to trust, where you grew in patience, where you strengthened your faith, where you learned to wait with hope and not with despair. That day you will say, "It was worth it." And every tear, every doubt, every night of solitude will have a purpose, because it was the soil that bore fruit in the encounter. Do not ignore the small signs that God sends you along the way. Perhaps an unexpected conversation, a word that seems tailor-made for you, a situation that awakens your heart. Each one of those things is like a spark that keeps the certainty that what is coming is real. Do not disconnect from those signs. Embrace them as reminders that your soulmate is closer than you think. And I want to tell you something else, something that can change the way you look at this wait. Your soulmate is not looking for you in a hurry, they are looking for you with purpose, because what is of God is not rushed, but neither is it lost. What is from God always arrives, and when it arrives, it does so at exactly the right time. So do not be afraid. Do not think that silence is a sign that it does not exist. See it as confirmation that there are still details being prepared, pieces falling into place, paths aligning. Remember that every step you take today also brings you closer to that encounter. Every decision to grow, to heal, to trust, to stand firm is part of your preparation. And the more you work on yourself, the more ready you will be to recognize and receive what is already destined. Because recognizing your soulmate will not be a matter of logic, it will be a spiritual recognition. Your soul will know. When you finally cross paths, you will not need long explanations or exaggerated external signs, because there will be a peace in your heart, a certainty in your spirit that will say, "It is here." And that peace will be the mark of God, the strongest confirmation you will ever receive. It will not be about fleeting emotions, it will be about a deep conviction that nothing can extinguish. So today I encourage you to continue walking with faith, to keep your heart open and your trust firm, because even though right now you only hear silence, in that silence one of the most beautiful promises of your life is being built. Your soulmate is already looking for you, even if it is in silence, and soon, very soon, that silence will transform into words, into actions, into a real presence. Trust because heaven has not forgotten about you. Trust because the plan is already in motion. Trust because the love that was designed for you is closer than you imagine. And when it happens, you will know that everything that today seemed like a delay was actually perfection. Today I want to talk to you about something that you are listening to right now by no means by chance. You have not arrived here by accident, nor is it a coincidence that this message resonates with what you have been feeling deep in your heart for some time. Listen carefully, because today you will receive clear and direct confirmation. That person who walked away from your life, that relationship that seemed over, will cross your path again. You will not be able to avoid it because it does not depend on your human effort or your control, but on a divine plan that was already written. And throughout this message you will understand why this happens, how God uses even moments of silence and distance to fulfill His purpose. And what does this return mean in your life? Many times we believe that when someone leaves it is because everything is over, because mistakes weigh too much or because circumstances have made it impossible to continue. But what I want you to understand today is that absence is not always the end, and that what God unites in the heart is not broken by distance or trials. Maybe you yourself have tried to close the door, or maybe you have asked God for signs to confirm if there is still a purpose with that person. And here's the answer. Yes, that person will return, and he will do so at the perfect time when both of you are ready to understand what was not so clear before. God works in mysterious ways, and one of them is allowing someone to step away for a while so that in the process they can learn, mature, and discover what is truly valuable. You have also changed during this time because silences also transform. You did not realize it, but the distance taught you to depend more on God, to strengthen your identity and to heal wounds that you did not want to face before. And now, when you least expect it, when you thought that this story would never happen again, the Lord opens the way for your destinies to cross again. It is important that you understand that this return is not a whim of fate or a coincidence of the universe. No, this is a divine confirmation. There is something written on high, a promise that seemed dormant, but that today awakens. That person doesn't come back just like that, but because there is still a greater purpose to fulfill together. Don't think that everything will be exactly the same as before, because God doesn't repeat chapters, He writes new beginnings. What you've experienced up until now was preparation, a training of the soul so that what comes next can be supported on a firm foundation. Perhaps you've wondered why you suddenly feel signs, intense memories, thoughts that come back to you as if they were invisible calls. You're not imagining it. They are reminders that the Spirit uses to prepare you. When someone has a purpose united with you, even if they try to escape or even if they seem to disappear, sooner or later they return, because what God unites, no one separates. And if this word is reaching you, It's because God wants you to open your eyes and heart to recognize it. Now I want you to do something very simple, but very powerful. Write these words in the comments. I trust in your timing, Lord. That will be your way of activating your faith, of publicly declaring that you don't live in anxiety for what you don't control, but that you rest in the divine plan. When you write it down, don't just write it down as a phrase, but as an act of surrender, of absolute trust. And I want you to think about something. What if the separation that caused you so much pain was actually the tool that God used to open your eyes? Sometimes what seems like loss is actually protection. Because if that person hadn't left at that moment, perhaps you would never have learned to value yourself, you would never have sought God so deeply, you would never have grown in emotional maturity. The silence was necessary, and although you didn't understand it at the time, today you will be able to see that every tear you shed was part of a sowing that will bear fruit. Look, there are times when God allows pauses that are disconcerting, that hurt, that seem unfair, but those pauses are not the end, they are part of the process. In the pause, God molds, repairs, and prepares. That person also needed that time because there were things in their life that couldn't remain the same. Perhaps they struggled with fears, with insecurities, with wrong paths that distanced them from what was essential. And even though you didn't see it, God was working in secret. Now that work is beginning to show signs, and that's why this word comes to you today, because the time to return is closer than you think. It's not about clinging on in desperation or trying to control what's to come. Quite the opposite. All God asks is that you trust, that you keep your heart sensitive and prepared. Because when it happens, it won't be like before, it will be better. What used to be broken by pride will now be restored by humility. What used to hurt because of a lack of understanding will now be healed by true communication. And what used to seem unstable will now be strengthened by faith and purpose. Let me tell you something that may sound harsh, but it's necessary. Don't be mistaken in thinking that you're the one who lost or that your value diminished when that person walked away. No, on the contrary, many times God allows someone to walk away to show you that your identity doesn't depend on that relationship, but on what He says about you. And when you learn that, when your security is established in heaven, then you are ready to receive back what is truly valuable, without fear of losing it again. Perhaps at this moment you are remembering words that were left unfinished, promises that seemed broken, moments that you still keep in your memory. Do not repress those memories because they also have a purpose. What you did not understand at the time, today begins to make sense, and when that person returns, those pieces of the puzzle that seemed lost will begin to fit together. And listen to this. No matter how many kilometers of distance there have been, no matter how many silences or obstacles, when God decides to unite us again, no circumstance can prevent it. Months or even years may have passed, but what is written in heaven, sooner or later manifests on earth. That return is marked. And if your heart beats strongly as you listen to these words, it is because this message is for you. Have you noticed how in the last few days something inside you began to awaken again, as if your spirit was more attentive to signs that previously went unnoticed? It's no coincidence. When God begins to move invisible pieces to prepare an encounter, He also begins to sensitize the hearts of those who are part of that plan. Maybe you received a sudden memory, heard a song that made you think of that person, or saw a detail on the street that led you directly to that story. All those little moments are ways in which heaven reminds you. It's not finished. There is still something to be fulfilled. What comes next will not be a forced return or based on fleeting nostalgia. It will be an inevitable return because it is born from a purpose that was already written. God does not unite paths by accident, and when that person returns, they will do so with a different heart, with a renewed vision, with a clarity they didn't have before. Because wanting to return is not enough. You need to have been transformed to sustain what is being rebuilt, and that transformation is already happening. Think for a moment about how many times you wanted to force things, how many prayers you asked for time to speed up, for circumstances to change immediately. But it wasn't the time. And although it seemed like God wasn't listening to you, He was actually protecting you from receiving something immature, something that couldn't yet blossom. He knew that if that person returned too soon, they would return with the same wounds, the same mistakes, the same confusion, and instead of healing, they would hurt again. That's why the wait was necessary. Now the pieces begin to move at a different pace. Deep down, that person feels a calling that they can't ignore. It's not just about missing someone, it's about recognizing that far away from you, far away from what God brought together, there is an emptiness that nothing can fill. And that emptiness isn't nostalgia, it's purpose. When something is destined, life itself takes care of showing it to you over and over again. That certainty is growing in your heart, even if you don't see it with your own eyes yet. Here I want you to take a deep breath and think about what it means to you to be ready for that return. Because it's not just about passively waiting, it's about actively preparing yourself. God doesn't want you to receive that person with the same insecurities or fears that you had before. He wants you to receive it with a renewed heart, with trust placed in Him, not in your own strength. Human love can fail, but when love is sustained by God, it acquires an eternal dimension. Look what happens when a seed falls on fertile ground. It requires a process. First it dies, then it germinates, then it sprouts. The same happened with your relationship. There was a time of death when it seemed that everything had ended, but in secret the seed was still alive, waiting for the moment to sprout. And now you are in that transition where the first signs of life begin to manifest. Do not doubt it. What God planted will bear fruit and you will see it with your own eyes. Perhaps you still have doubts. Perhaps you think, what if this word is not for me? What if I am just wishful thinking? Quote, let me remind you of something. Doubt is normal, but do not let it steal the certainty that God has already planted in your spirit. If this message resonates with you, if something inside you beats strongly while you listen to it, then it is not a coincidence. It is God confirming what you have already been feeling in silence. I also want to talk to you about the importance of healing before reuniting, because the return will be inevitable, but the way in which you receive it depends on you. If you carry resentment, if you keep reproaches, if you still have open wounds, you could close the door that God is knocking on. That is why this time is a time of preparation, of letting go of bitterness, of forgiving from the heart, of learning to look forward without letting the past chain you. And no, it is not about justifying what happened or denying the pain. It is about releasing it into God's hands, recognizing that you cannot carry that weight alone. When you surrender those wounds, then your heart is free to receive the new. And the new does not mean that you ignore what happened, but that you use it as a testimony of what God can restore. I know that sometimes the silence made you desperate, that it made you think that God had forgotten about you, but I want you to engrave this truth in your mind. Silence was not abandonment, it was protection. When heaven is silent, it is also speaking. And in that apparent emptiness, God strengthened you, made you grow, and taught you to depend more on Him. Now that silence will give way to a movement that you will not be able to stop. I want you to imagine it. One day, without warning, you will receive a clear sign, a message, a call, an unexpected encounter. And you will know in your spirit that it is not a coincidence, that it is the fulfillment of what you are hearing today. That person will return, not because you sought them out, but because God Himself is bringing them back in perfect timing. Now I ask you something important. Are you willing to open your heart with faith? Are you willing to believe even though you still do not see anything with your eyes? Because faith is not waiting until you see. Faith is walking trusting in what God has already promised. And this return is a promise that comes from on high. Listen carefully. No one can prevent what God has already determined. Not distance, not mistakes, not the negative voices around you. What is written for you will be fulfilled, because heaven does not fail. That person may have tried to escape, may have sought to fill their life with distractions, but sooner or later purpose will catch up with them and they will understand that their place is once again by your side. Don't be surprised if in the coming days you begin to have more clarity in your dreams, if you wake up with peace instead of anxiety, if you perceive a change in your spirit, all of that is preparation. God is not only moving that person, He is also moving you. He is aligning you, strengthening you, filling you with faith so that when the moment comes you will not hesitate, but will receive with gratitude what He has prepared. And listen for something else. This return will not only be for you, it will be a testimony for others. Many people around you will see how God restores what seemed impossible. How He opens paths where before there were only walls. And your story will serve so that others may believe, so that others may also wait in faith, so that it is known that God continues to be faithful to His promises. Therefore, even though you do not yet see anything tangible, I want you to declare it in your heart from now on. Lord, I trust in your plan. Even if you don't understand the process, that statement will be your anchor in the midst of waiting. It will be the sign that your faith is placed in the one who never fails. I want you to open your heart wide to what I am going to tell you now, because this is where everything begins to take on an even deeper meaning. That person who returns to your life will not do so just because there was an emotional bond between you, but because there is a spiritual calling that drives him or her to return. When God decides to connect two lives with a purpose, that bond becomes something much greater than fleeting emotions. It is a bond woven in the eternal, in the invisible, in something that cannot be broken by distance or human error. Perhaps you have heard the phrase many times, if they come back, it is because they truly belong to you, but what I want to make clear is that it is not about belonging in a human sense, it is about belonging in purpose. That person returns because there is something they must accomplish together, something that transcends the personal and reaches the spiritual. God does not bring people together just to share moments. He brings them together so that they can experience processes that impact others, so that together they can reflect what true love is, the love that comes from heaven. Think about how you changed during this time of silence. You are not the same person as before. Your prayers became deeper. Your dependence on God was strengthened. Your wounds found a healing process. None of that was in vain, because now you will not receive that person empty-handed or with a broken heart. You will receive them with a different maturity, with the ability to love without fear, to forgive without reproach, to build without repeating the same mistakes. That return will not be a simple return to the way things were before, it will be a rebirth. God does not repeat chapters, He writes new ones, stories. What comes next will not be a repetitive cycle, it will be a fresh start, with firm foundations, with clear direction, with the certainty that this time they are not walking alone, because the Lord will be the center. And when God is the center, nothing can destroy what He sustains. I know that memories appear in your mind, perhaps some full of pain. And you may wonder, can I really trust again? Can I really open my heart again without fear of being hurt? That is a normal doubt, but do not allow it to paralyze you, because the same God who is confirming the return is also the one who will give you the peace and security to receive it. It will not be a leap into the void, it will be a firm step sustained by faith. Let me tell you something important. When God restores, He does not do it halfway. He does not return what was lost in worse conditions. He returns it multiplied, renewed, improved. That is how it will be with that person. They do not return with the same chains, they return freer. They do not return with the same doubts. They return with clarity. They do not return with the same wounds. They return with a willingness to heal and rebuild. That will be the seal of the divine in this process. Now I want you to think about this. What will you do when that moment comes? How will you react when you see with your own eyes what your spirit already knew? The correct response is not to run in anxiety or despair, but to receive with gratitude and discernment. Because it will not be a return to relive the past, it will be a return to walk towards a new future. And in that future, your faith will be the key that opens doors that previously seemed closed. Remember that this is not just a message to reassure you, it is a preparation. God is preparing your heart so that what is coming does not surprise you, but that you receive it with maturity. He is preparing your emotions so that they do not dominate you. He is preparing your mind so that you do not fall into old patterns. Because the return is inevitable, but the way you live it depends on how you position yourself right now. I want you to visualize this. Every tear you shed, every prayer you prayed silently, every time you said, "Lord, I do not understand, but I trust in you." All of that became seeds that will now bear fruit. That person's return will also be a harvest of faith, an answer to all those prayers that seem to have no echo. Heaven never ignored your cry, it was simply saving it for the perfect moment. And listen carefully, when that person returns, you will know it was God, because everything will fit together in a way that you could not have planned yourself. The encounter will be natural, it will flow with peace, not with confusion. There will be clear signs, confirmations in your spirit, moments that will leave no doubt that this comes from above. Because when God does something, He does it with order, with purpose and with peace. Do not be afraid of what is coming. Do not think of the worst. Think about what God promised. Because this return will not be an accident, it will be a confirmation that God's plan always prevails. That person may have walked far, but he could never escape the purpose. And that purpose is stronger than any mistake, stronger than any obstacle, stronger than any opposition. Today I tell you with certainty, prepare yourself, because what seemed impossible is closer to being fulfilled than you can imagine. That person will return to your life, and when they do, everything will make sense. You won't be able to avoid it because it doesn't depend on your effort, but on the divine plan that was already written. And when you experience it, you will remember these words and know that it was God who confirmed it from the beginning. So keep your faith, open your heart and declare once again, "I trust in your timing, Lord, and I receive your promise." That declaration will be the final seal of this message in your spirit, because what you waited for with tears, you will soon receive with joy. Today I want you to listen carefully because you are not here by chance. What you are going to hear now is a confirmation that your heart has been needing, an answer that you have been silently asking for, in your prayers, in your thoughts before going to sleep, in those moments when doubt seemed greater than faith. And it is that God confirms to you today that that person will seek you out and will not stop. It does not matter how much time has passed, it does not matter how many doors seemed closed, or how many excuses were made in between. When God moves the invisible strings, nothing and no one can stop what He has already decided for you. Perhaps today you find yourself tired of waiting with questions that no one answers and with the emptiness that absence leaves. You have felt that your strength is flagging, that your trust is wavering, and that hope seems far away. But let me tell you something. When the voice of God speaks, everything else is silenced. And today His voice reminds you that that person, yes, the same one you carry in your heart and in your thoughts, will take the step of seeking you out. It won't be a half-hearted attempt or a half-hearted effort. It will be a determined, unstoppable movement, guided by a force that not even they themselves will be able to explain. I want you to imagine it for a moment. That person waking up with the need to talk to you, with the desire to get closer, with a conviction that something is pushing them in your direction. It's as if heaven itself were aligning circumstances, conversations, unexpected encounters that seemed impossible. And when it happens, you're going to remember these words and you're going to understand that it wasn't a coincidence, but a purpose. Now, I know that as you listen to this, a part of you is filled with excitement, but another part may be wondering, will it really happen? Is it true for me? And I want you to be honest with yourself. This isn't the first time you felt like something is speaking directly to your heart. God has mysterious ways of reaching us, and sometimes He does just that, through messages that appear at the exact moment when we need them most. If you are listening to this today, it is not just a simple video, it is the way He chose to confirm what you were already feeling inside. Faith is not about having everything clear or seeing every detail of the path. Faith is about taking a step trusting that there is a bigger hand holding you up. And today God wants you to use that faith not to stay still, but to wait with hope. Because waiting on Him is never in vain. Perhaps you have spent nights crying in silence, hiding your emotions from others, trying to be strong on the outside when inside you were broken. But those tears did not fall to the ground in vain. They were seen and collected by the one who sees everything. And that is why today He tells you, prepare yourself, because that person will seek you out and will not stop until he finds you. I want to invite you to write in the comments right now, I trust in God's promise. Because when we declare with our words what we believe in our hearts, we give Him strength and power. Writing it down is not just a symbolic gesture, it is a way of activating your faith, of putting into action that certainty that what God spoke will come to pass. I want to read your words. I want us to fill this space with declarations of trust. Because when one rises in faith, others also receive the encouragement to rise. And as you write it, I want you to feel how those doubts begin to lose strength. God does not want you to live in a constant state of anxiety wondering when or how it will happen. He wants you to rest in the certainty that it is already done in the spiritual world and the only thing missing is for it to manifest in your life. Just as a tree takes time to grow underground before it shows itself on the surface, so too is this promise already germinating, even though you do not see it yet. Imagine the scene of that person trying to resist, saying, "I shouldn't, I can't, it's not the time." But feeling an internal pressure that does not leave them at peace. That is the work of God, touching their heart, removing excuses, breaking down the walls that pride or fear have built. And when that day comes, it won't be because you insist, it won't be because you sought it, it will be because God Himself prepared the way and moved that person toward you. I want you to keep this in your heart. What is coming will be so clear, so evident, that there will be no way for you to attribute it to chance. It will be so perfect in its timing that you will know that God's hand was in every detail. And when that happens, it will not only be for your joy, but also to strengthen your faith and remind you that He never forgets His children. I want you to understand something very important. When God makes a promise, He does not retract, He does not regret, He does not change His mind. Men can fail, human words can be empty, but what comes out of the mouth of God remains forever. And what is confirming to you today is that the movement has already begun, even if you do not see it yet. That person is already being disturbed. He is already feeling the weight of distance, he is already experiencing an emptiness that nothing and no one can fill. Because it's not just a human desire, it's a divine plan. I know that during this time you felt ignored, forgotten, as if your love and dedication had meant nothing. You've gone over everything that happened 1,000 times in your mind, wondering, what did you do wrong? What did you do wrong? Why were you left aside? But what I want to tell you today is that there are things that are beyond understanding. Many times God allows a separation not to destroy what is there, but to transform it, to purify it, to make what comes back stronger, firmer, truer. That distance that caused you so much pain, it wasn't a punishment, it was a process, and that process is about to bear fruit. The wonderful thing about trusting in God is that He doesn't need our logic or our strategy to act. He works in ways we never imagined. Sometimes He touches hearts in dreams. Other times He sends signs through people or situations, and sometimes He simply awakens a longing so strong that it can't be ignored. That same thing is happening with that person you've waited for so long. It may seem like he is continuing with his life, that he doesn't think about you, that everything is behind him, but the reality is different. Inside his heart, something is constantly stirring, reminding him that he has to return to you. And that inner voice will not go out until he decides to listen to it and seek you. I want you to take a moment to reflect on the following. How many times did you think it was the end? How many times did you feel that there was no possibility, that everything was lost? However, here you are receiving this confirmation. That is proof that God is not finished with you or with that story, because if everything were really over, you would not have this restlessness in your spirit, you would not be here now. You would not be listening to these words that seem to speak directly to your situation. It is amazing how God prepares us for what is to come. He does not give you all the details because He wants you to trust, but He gives you enough signs so that your heart does not give up. And this message is precisely one of those signs. This is not to make you desperate, it is not to make you obsessed, but to give you peace, knowing that what is yours by purpose, no one can take away from you. That person may try to run away, they may resist, but sooner or later the power of true love and God's plan will bring them back to you. Now listen carefully. When that moment comes for that person to approach you, it will not be under any circumstances. God will have worked on both of your hearts, on yours, so that you have the maturity to receive, so that your faith is firm, so that your hope does not depend on what you see, but on what you believe, and on theirs, so that they leave behind fear, pride, and doubts, and come with clarity, with a genuine desire to rebuild what was lost. I want you to imagine that scene not from a place of anxiety, but from a place of peace. Not from a place of desperation about when it will happen, but from the complete trust that it will happen at the perfect time. God is never late. He knows the exact time when everything has to happen. And when that happens, you'll see that every second of waiting will have been worth it. There's something else you should also know. Many times when God is about to fulfill a promise, the trials intensify. You may feel more doubts, more negative thoughts, more obstacles around you. That doesn't mean that everything is going badly. It means that what's about to come is so great that the enemy wants to steal your peace before it's time. But here's the key. Don't be fooled. If things seem complicated, look up and remember this confirmation. God has already said it, and if He said it, it will come to pass. That's why I want you to repeat to yourself, or even out loud if you can, I trust, I hope, and I receive the promise of God. Those words aren't magic. They are statements that strengthen your faith and help you stand firm when emotions want to drag you into doubt. Every time you say it, you'll be reminding yourself that your hope doesn't depend on what you see, but on what God has already decreed. And as you maintain that faith, remember that your task is not to chase, not to beg, not to insist desperately. Your task is to prepare yourself, yes, prepare yourself emotionally, spiritually, and mentally to receive what is coming. Because when that person returns, you will need to be strong, confident, and full of peace. You cannot receive a blessing with a heart full of unhealed wounds. That is why this time of waiting is not a loss, it is a gift. It is the opportunity to heal what hurts, to grow within yourself, to reconnect with yourself and with God. Imagine what it will mean when that person knocks on your door, or when you receive that unexpected message, or when you hear your voice after so long. The impact will be so profound that you will know that it was not your doing, that it did not depend on your effort, but on something much greater. And that certainty will be your greatest peace. So until that moment arrives, keep your eyes open, your heart sensitive, and your faith alive, because God is already at work. He is already moving pieces that you cannot see. He is already putting in order what seemed broken. And very soon what you hear as a promise today, you will see as a reality. I want you to keep in your heart that what God is doing at this time is not just about that person, it is also about you. Because if everything were just about waiting for someone to return, your life would be on hold. And God does not want that for you. He wants to see you grow, move forward, discover new strength, and experience His peace even before the answer arrives. He knows that waiting without purpose wears you down, but waiting in Him transforms you. And while you wait, He is preparing you. He is building in you the strongest, wisest, and most faith-filled version of you that you have ever been. That person who comes to you will not come across the same wounded and confused person as before. They will meet someone who has learned to trust in the invisible, someone who knows that they do not depend on others to feel loved, because they have discovered that God's love is already enough, and from that fullness you will be able to receive what comes to you without fear of losing it, because you will know that nothing and no one can take away what comes from the hand of heaven. I want you to take a deep breath and think about this. Sometimes God allows us to lack something so that we can learn to live in His presence. And when we understand that, we stop begging for love, we stop running after what we don't need, we stop living in anxiety. Instead, we begin to live with the certainty that good things are coming, that what is promised will be fulfilled, and that everything that arrives in its time brings peace instead of confusion. And it is precisely that peace that you will feel when that person approaches. It will not be a chaotic movement, it will not be a return full of doubts, it will be a firm step, guided by the clarity that only God can give. Maybe right now you are thinking, what if it doesn't happen? What if I am wrong in my belief? But listen carefully, believing is never a mistake when you choose to trust in God. Faith will always be wiser than doubt. Faith opens doors that fear keeps closed, and even though your eyes do not yet see it, your heart can already begin to celebrate, because what God says is as real as the air you breathe. In every story He restores, in every relationship He rebuilds, there's always one thing in common. It happens in a way no one expected. And that's what makes it so powerful. Don't try to imagine exactly how it will happen. Don't wear yourself out thinking about possible scenarios. Just rest and trust that it will be perfect. When it does, you'll know it was time, you'll know it was the plan, and everything will make sense. Think of the days you've spent wondering if it was worth waiting any longer, the tears you've shed in secret, the nights you've asked for a sign. Today that sign has arrived, and its message is clear. That person will seek you out and won't stop until they find you. They won't do it on impulse or out of curiosity. They'll do it because something bigger than either of you is guiding them. And when you cross paths again, you won't have to ask why. You'll feel it deep inside you, and you'll know that God's hand was there all along. I want to encourage you to continue to cherish your faith as you would a flame until that moment comes. Don't let it be extinguished by the winds of doubt. Don't neglect it with thoughts of defeat. Feed it with prayer, with gratitude, with words of hope. Every time discouragement tries to approach, remember this promise and say, God has already said it and I believe it. That statement will sustain you because faith that is confessed out loud grows stronger in the heart, and when the waiting is over, your testimony will be so powerful that it will not only mark your life, it will inspire others. Many people around you need to see that God's faithfulness is real. They need living proof that trusting in Him is never in vain. And you will be one of those proofs. Your story will be a reminder that God's timing is perfect, that His love never fails, and that what He joins together no one can separate. So receive this word not with fear, but with joy, not as a burden, but as a gift. Get ready because what is coming will be beautiful, it will be transformative, and it will be so clear that you will have no doubts. That person will take the step, will approach, will seek your presence and will not rest until they find you. And when that happens, do not forget to thank God, because in the end everything was His work, everything was His plan, and everything was for your good. Today this confirmation ends, but the work that God began in you is just beginning to blossom. Keep your heart willing, keep your hands open and your eyes lifted, because the fulfillment is closer than you imagine. And very soon what now seems like a whisper of promise will become an event that will transform your life forever. Today I want to talk to you about something that is not a coincidence, it is not a coincidence, and that has everything to do with what you have been silently asking. You have been waiting for a sign, an answer, a yes or no, a continue or a stop in relation to that person who occupies your mind and your heart. And what you are seeing and hearing right now is not just another video, it is not just another message on your screen. It is the confirmation that you were looking for, the answer that God is giving you today so that you can finally have clarity about what that person means in your life. I am not going to give you everything in advance, because the most important thing is not to rush to hear the end, but to open your heart step by step to what this message is revealing. I want you to take a deep breath and, right now, give yourself permission to be here, to listen to it all, because what comes next could be what changes the way you see that relationship, that connection, that bond that worries you so much. I know that you have been wondering this for a long time. Have you ever wondered, is that person really for me? Should I insist, wait, forgive, get closer? Or is it that God is showing me that it's time to let go, to close cycles, to stop wasting energy where there is no more life? That doubt robs you of peace, hours of sleep, distracts you in the middle of your days, and although you try to hide it, although in front of others you act normally, you know that your heart beats hard when you think of that person. You didn't get here by chance today. You're here because God knows that you can't continue carrying so much confusion because you need clear direction. And in this message, He's going to speak to you directly, not through vague signs that you don't understand, but with words that will fit perfectly with what you're experiencing. I want you to pay attention because in the next few minutes you're going to recognize details that seem to have been written exactly for you. There are times when God responds with silence because He wants you to learn to wait, but there are also times like this when His answer is so clear that it leaves no room for doubt. And this is one of those times. If you've been asking God to show you if that person truly has a purpose in your life, this is where the revelation begins. Maybe that person showed up in your life at a time when you were vulnerable, when you needed support, companionship, or simply to feel seen. And since then, they've become someone you can't ignore. They may have made you feel intense emotions, experience joy, excitement, but also uncertainty and pain. Because it's not just about what you feel, it's about what God wants to build with you. Now, listen carefully. God never sends people to destroy your peace. He never puts someone in your path who will steal your identity, who will make you doubt your worth, who will leave you empty. And if that person is causing more tears than smiles, more doubts than certainties, more chains than freedom, perhaps you already have part of the answer you've been waiting for. But don't get ahead of yourself, because what I want to show you is deeper than a simple yes or no. In the midst of all this, there is a detail that we sometimes overlook. What we feel can confuse us, but what comes from God always brings signs of peace, even if it hurts. And I want you to think for a moment, when you talk to that person, does your spirit rest or is it stirred? When you distance yourself, do you feel freer or more chained? Because that's when what God wants to tell you today begins to be revealed. Don't ignore what your heart perceives when you put that relationship in prayer. Don't ignore that feeling that comes in the midst of silence when you're no longer talking to anyone else, that whisper that makes you feel that perhaps you're idealizing too much, that perhaps you're giving your love in a place where it's not reciprocated in the same way. God speaks much more than we think, but sometimes we don't want to listen because the answer isn't what we imagined. And before we continue, I want to ask you for something important. If while you are listening to this you feel in your heart that God is already showing you a sign, I invite you to write it in the comments. Write, Lord, I open my eyes to see your answer. Do it with faith, because by writing it down you will not only be participating in this moment, but also declaring that you are ready to receive what He has prepared. Now, let's continue. There are times when that person you have been waiting for may be part of God's plan, but not in the time or in the way you imagined. Sometimes God allows two people to meet, but He also allows them to separate, because the process that each one needs to live is not yet complete. Maybe the problem is not the person themselves, but that the time is not yet. And that hurts because the heart wants quick answers, but God works in seasons, not in impulses. On the other hand, it may be that that person has only arrived as a bridge, as a tool that God used to teach you something that you needed to learn. And although it hurts to let go, the truth is that God does not want you tied to what was temporary. And here is the key. What is eternal remains. What is fleeting dissolves. And if that person is disappearing from your life, perhaps it is not the enemy taking them away from you, but God Himself protecting you from something that is not good for you. The hardest thing to accept is that many times we ask God to confirm what our heart has already decided. We ask Him to say yes when deep down we already know that the answer is no, and while we insist, we suffer. But today God wants to free you from that cycle. He wants to show you that the answer you long for so much is not to condemn you or punish you, but to set you free. When it comes to that person, there are signs that you can no longer ignore: the lack of peace, the lack of reciprocity, the emotional distance, the absence of commitment. Because when someone is truly sent by God, they do not play with your emotions, they do not appear and disappear at their convenience, they do not sow insecurity in your life. The love that comes from God always builds, always contributes, always aligns with His purpose for you. And here I want you to stop for a moment. Ask yourself sincerely, do you bring Him into your life? Does it resemble the love that God describes? Or rather, does it resemble the confusion of the world? Because confusion never comes from God. And that's where the answer begins to become clear. I want you to stay with me right now with an open heart, because now we're going to delve a little deeper into what that answer that God is giving you about that person means. It's not a superficial answer, it's not simply a stay or go, but an understanding that transforms the way you relate and how you allow others to enter your life. Because if what you're looking for is clarity, the first thing you have to understand is that God doesn't respond to feed the illusion. He responds to protect your purpose. Maybe you feel that you can't be without that person, that your life would lose meaning if they weren't by your side, that no one else would understand what you carry inside. And that's where you need to open your eyes wide, because when we come to think that we can't breathe without someone, we fall into a form of dependency that does not come from God. True love never enslaves you, never robs you of your freedom, never makes you believe that your value depends on someone else. And if that person awakens in you more chains than wings, then God will give you His showing that it is not the love He dreamed for you. But there is also another side to the coin. That person may awaken the best in you, inspire you, bring you closer to God, motivate you to grow, and show you facets of yourself that you did not know about. And if that happens, then what you need to discern is not only whether they are the right person, but whether you are in the right moment. Because God's plan is not measured by the desire you have now, but by the process that He is carrying out in your life. Let me tell you something that you may not have wanted to hear. Sometimes we insist so much on receiving an answer that we forget to ask ourselves if we are prepared to live what we ask for. Do you want a mature, real, deep love, but are you ready to give it? That person is. Because it is not enough for the feeling to be strong. It is also necessary for the root to be firm, for both to be founded on faith, truth, and the will of God. And this is where we enter into a deeper revelation. God will not give you a relationship that is not something that is not in the best interests of the individual. Never separate you from Him. Even if you feel butterflies, even if you feel excitement, if that person distances you from your faith, if they cool your spiritual life, if they extinguish your desire to seek God, then the answer is already there in front of you. You don't need to wait for an extraordinary miracle, because God is already showing you with facts that that connection does not come from Him. Remember something, the enemy can also put people in your path, but always with a goal, to distract you, confuse you, and make you lose focus on the purpose. And those people often seem perfect at the beginning, they seem to be the answer to your prayers, but over time they show their true fruit. And Jesus said that we will know them by their fruits. If the fruit of that relationship is anxiety, insecurity, constant tears, lies, doubts, then you already know where it comes from. Now, there is also something beautiful that I want you not to forget. God is capable of transforming stories. Even if that person today does not reflect everything they should, if both decide to surrender to God, if they place the relationship in His hands, if they surrender to His guidance, then He can rebuild, heal, and lead them to a new level. But listen carefully, this requires both of you to want it. It's not enough for you to be the one praying, believing, fighting, and surrendering. True and blessed love is for two. Never for just one person to carry everything. Maybe you've been asking God about that person for months, even years. You've shed tears in secret. You've said prayers at dawn. You've felt that silence is consuming you. But let me tell you that silence doesn't mean absence, it means preparation. God doesn't play with your emotions. God doesn't ignore your cry. He hears you, and if He hasn't given you the answer you wanted before, it's because He wanted to give you the answer you need today. That person you're asking about can be in your life as a gift or as a lesson. And here's the key. Both are blessings, because if it's a gift, you'll receive it with gratitude, you'll take care of it, and it will be part of your story. But if it's a lesson, then it will also make you grow, learn, mature, and prepare you for the true gift that God has in store for you. I want you to be there. Think about something. How many times have you insisted that God closed it? How many times have you clung to someone who was leaving, and yet, when you look back, you understand that if that person had stayed today, you wouldn't be where you are? The same thing could be happening now, but in the present tense. And I know it's hard to see it because your emotions are screaming, because your heart is beating hard, but God sees what you don't see. He knows what that person thinks when you're not there, what they say when they're not listening, what they'll do in the future. And if He's talking to you today, it's not to confuse you, it's to free you from something that could hurt you much more tomorrow. Now I want you to stop for a moment and do an exercise with me. Imagine that that person stays in your life forever, just as they are today, without changing at all. Does that give you peace or rob you of sleep? If your heart is restless, if you feel a knot in your stomach, then listen to what God is telling you. Don't cling to what takes away your peace. And if, on the contrary, you feel rest, joy, confidence, then ask God to confirm, to open paths, to strengthen what you have begun. There is a phrase that I want you to keep deep inside. When it is from God, it flows. When it is not, it is forced. The love that comes from God does not need masks. It does not need manipulation. It does not need you to beg for attention. It simply flows because it is backed by His presence. And as you continue listening to this, I know that inside you some pieces are already starting to fit together. You may already be understanding why certain things happened. Why does that person act the way they do? Why did you feel so much confusion? It is because God is opening your eyes today so that you can see beyond the obvious. Do not ignore this moment. Do not say, "Tomorrow I will think about it," because today is the day that God decided to speak to you. And if you are feeling it in your heart, it is because this message is exactly for you. Excellent. Let's go to part 3, which needs to be a deep conclusion, keeping the tone conversational and fluid, without seeming forced. Here we are going to close with impact, provide clarity and a strong ending that leaves the audience with a sense of revelation and tell the story. Now that we have come this far, I want you to take a deep breath and open your heart a little more, because this is the moment when everything you have heard begins to take shape inside you. It is no coincidence that God has waited until today to give you this answer. You have been asking for it, searching for it, even desperate to understand, and now He gives it to you in such a clear way that you will not be able to ignore it any longer. That person who occupies your mind and heart has been a test in your life. For some, God's answer is yes, continue, but do it with me without rushing, without shortcuts, with faith. For others, the answer is no, because what I have prepared for you is much greater and more beautiful than what you are trying to hold on to. And even if it hurts, even if your heart resists, you must remember that what comes from God will never make you lose yourself, will never make you beg, will never leave you empty-handed. What God is showing you today is that your value does not depend on that person, that your identity, your future, your dreams do not revolve around someone else, but around what He has written for you. Because if that person is part of your purpose, they will remain and nothing and no one will be able to remove them from your path. But if they are not, then the same God who speaks to you today will take charge of opening new doors for you, of putting people in front of you who add value, who elevate you, who bring you closer to Him. Do not confuse waiting with abandonment. God never abandons you. If that person is not who you had imagined, it does not mean that God wants you alone. It means that He is saving you for something better, for someone who not only fits you, but who fits the divine purpose that He designed before you were born. I want you to understand this. Not everything we love is eternal, but everything that is eternal comes from God's love. That relationship that didn't work out, that person who didn't stick around, that answer that you perhaps didn't want to hear today, are all part of a plan that goes beyond what your mind can comprehend right now. But the day will come when you look back and be grateful for every no, for every closed door, for every silence, because they led you straight to what was truly yours. And if today the answer you receive is a yes, that person has a place in your life, then take care of them. Don't neglect them, don't put them in the background, don't lose them out of pride or fear, because true love requires dedication, patience, and sacrifice. And if God is confirming that this is where you should be, then give yourself with all your heart, but never stop putting God at the center. Maybe you still have doubts, maybe your mind is full of questions, but your heart already knows the truth. Because when God speaks, confusion dissipates. And today, as you listen to each word, I'm sure that at some point you felt that lump in your throat, that tear wanting to come out, that feeling that you weren't listening to just any message, but something addressed directly to you. That is the confirmation you were asking for. So now I want to invite you to make a decision. Stop postponing what you already know. If God showed you that this person is not him, surrender it in prayer, let it go, trust that something better is coming. And if God showed you that he is, then give thanks, pray together, build with faith and allow him to be the center. Always remember that the love that comes from God is not confusing, it is not intermittent, it is not constant pain. The love that comes from God illuminates, strengthens, sustains, edifies. That is the love you deserve. That is the love that God wants for you. Don't forget to leave in the comments what you feel in your heart right now, because by writing it you will be sealing this answer. You will be declaring with faith what God has already shown you today. Write, "I trust in your answer, Lord." That simple phrase will be your statement of faith. It will be your way of telling God, "I accept what you have for me, even if it is not what I expected." And as you close this moment, I want you to take with you one certainty. The answer you have been seeking is no longer out there, no longer hidden. God has already given it to you today, clearly, directly, and full of love. Do not hesitate any longer. Do not live in uncertainty. Do not beg for what is not yours. Walk in faith, because if that person is part of your story, they will remain. And if they are not, God himself will take charge of showing you a future full of blessings, new people, and a love that truly reflects his heart. Today, confusion ends and clarity begins. Today, anxiety is broken and peace is born. Today, God gave you the answer you were waiting for about that person. Keep it in your heart and walk in the certainty that you will never be alone, because the one who sustains you is eternal.